wanting almost creating the world to burn because you're disconnected from your emotion and from the pain. You're disconnected with the sacredness of life. Like each child a woman had to give birth to, raise, have sleepless night, put food on their table, make mistake, just like we're not connected to the sacredness of life. And so there's a disregard for our word. It's like children who use word without realizing what they mean and what they do. And so I'm really like, we are powerful creatures. In the Christian tradition, is in the way you're the children of God. There's something divine in us. There's a life force that is divine in us, and therefore our word is divine. And so we have to measure our words.
Welcome to the Second Renaissance podcast. Artists, activists, contemplatives, and visionaries forging pathways through the meta-crisis to a second renaissance and a wiser, weller world.
Because underneath, I think there's like a real terror and fear that is striking people, of being struck away from their freedom, being persecuted. And you have to also understand American history, that a lot of the people who went to the States were people who flee persecution in Europe. So the United States has a historical, lineage of why is America so obsessed with freedom? Because a lot of people who went to the States were fleeing persecution. And so that's why, and you can feel it in this kind of space. Now, when you act from fear, often there is a lot of violence that comes up. And that violence is on both sides, like bursting out of the seams at the moment. And I was really moved because regardless of, I wouldn't consider myself as a, conservative Christian, but I was really moved by Erika Kirk's speech where she expressed forgiveness. And that was profoundly moving. And I know some people write things like, oh, she was faking it and etc. It doesn't matter. It mattered her intention. Her intention was spreading a word of love and forgiveness. And I wouldn't consider myself as Christian, but there are some good things about Christianity. And these message of love and of forgiveness and peace are part of the Christian heritage. And there was something profound that the world really needed to hear, a message of love and forgiveness. Regardless of who that came, I would love from the West, I would love it from also the progressive leftist sides to show up this way. We both need to show up with love and forgiveness. And I was so heartbroken when right after you had Trump, who basically said that he hated his opponents. And that's kind of, I think it encapsulates so much of what's going on. You have on one moment a message of like reconciliation, of peace, of love, or forgiveness coming from this like woman who's heartbroken. And then the minute after you have, pouring gasoline onto the fire of more message of hatred. And then that image of Trump and Erika hugging each other. For me, this image was like, you had this kind of like the hateful speech and the forgiving speech hugging each other. And it's like, what do I make of this image? It's like something's not clocking fully. And at the same time, I can choose where I put my attention on. Right now, we have to say, okay, we need to water the seeds that this woman's planted of forgiveness. She planted also other seed, but we need to create more message of peace, of nonviolence, of forgiveness. That is key. That is so important because right now it is easy. It's an easy path to fall into the path of violence because the seed of violence exists in all of us and like blooms so easily. because of the hurt and the fear in us. But choosing peace and nonviolence requires far more courage, far more difficulty right now, but is far more needed. And that's real leadership, to take the non-easy path, which is right now calming down, showing compassion. And showing compassion does not mean you will agree with the person. It does not mean that, you have to zip your mouth. But is creating understanding, and understanding that we're all human beings. Universally, we all gonna live, we all gonna die, and we all suffer. There is no discrimination to suffering. And it took me a while, because some moments I was like, I felt the terror of like, oh, I can understand why some people were like, yeah, he's dead, because in their head, they're probably thinking he could have been the next president, and more conservatism and more oppression of their freedom would have come. And at the same time, after hearing her words of forgiveness, I thought, what is the wisdom path? And I thought of the word of Thich Nhat Hanh, who's been, an activist on the peace path, on nonviolence. And he used to say there's not a law of peace in the peace movement. And, and that we might have, I think a friend of mine shared that someone asked him saying, oh, would have, knowing what you know about Hitler, would you have killed Hitler? And he said no, because even if Hitler died, the hate didn't die with him. So it's not about killing Trump or Kirk, or on the other side, they probably, don't like a lot of, the leftists, or Jimmy Kimmel, or, it's not about the killing. It's about the seeds of hatred in our heart. And we can't kill the seed of hatred with our heart with hatred. We can only heal it with understanding and compassion. And understanding compassion does not mean, by the way, sitting and not doing anything and just letting violence happen, because that is also violence. Not seeing violence happening and not doing anything. It's, where does the intention come from? Does it come from love? Does it come from courage? Does it come from fear and anger? And lastly, I want to say, words really matter. This, actually in Christian tradition, in the Christian heritage, there's a sentence of, and God spoke, the light, and light became. And we speak reality into the world, the way we make sense and we create meaning through ideas and concept and art. We create meaning by our speaking. So if we speak hatred and violence, we create hatred and violence. If we speak love and compassion, we create love and compassion. That's why that moment of the memorial of Erika Kirk speaking a discourse of forgiveness, and that moment after of hate is like, we speak these into existence. And I have to say, that moment where she expressed her forgiveness, you could feel the stadium electrifying of the need for forgiveness. We all need forgiveness, because we are all responsible for this fuck up situation. Leadership is also taking the heat, is not saying it's over there with people blaming. It's like, we are causing the matter. We have created all this situation. And we have to take the heat, and we need forgiveness for having created a moment in the world where there's so much violence, so much insecurity for people, regardless of people of color or non-color. There's just this violence, and all that seed is in us. We need forgiveness. We all need forgiveness. We all need compassion. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, if we're thinking about making sense and the path forward of a meta crisis or, of a new era, I'm like, right now, there's a sense of people wanting to inflame the world and let it burn so that it may be reborn from its ash. These people have not forgotten what real war is like. It's like the idea of it's because it's in a state of idea. They have not experienced losing their loved ones, their children. They don't have a future where things are really at stake. There's also no sacredness in life. When you speak that way about wanting almost creating the world to burn because you're disconnected from your emotion and from the pain, you're disconnected with the sacredness of life. Like each child a woman had to give birth to, raise, have sleepless night, put food on their table, make mistake, just like we're not connected to the sacredness of life. And so there's a disregard for our word. It's like children who use word without realizing what they mean and what they do. And so I'm really like, we are powerful creatures. In the Christian tradition, is in a way you're the children of God. There's something divine in us. There's a life force that is divine in us, and therefore our word is divine. And so we have to measure our words.
Yeah. I want to appreciate, there's a lot that you've laid out there to appreciate. First of all, appreciating I take it to be almost a prior for you, a valuable prior that we attempt to find a multi-perspectival wholeness around the issue, beginning with Kirk himself. Like that is not at all an easy thing to do. And there was enormous amount of ideological pressure and information warfare going on in the days immediately after his death to say, this is who he is. He's, the usual Rasta fascist, misogynist, racist, sexist, whatever bad guy, concretize, look no further, or, father, husband, wife, Christian, defender of the Constitution, etc. Look no further. And I was on that journey throughout that week of being pulled between both of them. And I think I'm sort of still in the unfoldment of it, but for me, it feels really, really important. And what I'm hearing from you is the importance of like stereoscopic vision. And in that sense, the capacity to hold contradictions at the same time without resolving them completely is absolutely essential in resolving the polarity.
Yes, and you have to hold that I forgot what the word you used, but
Stereoscopic. Just like binoculars, two different.
Exactly. Let it buzz around, and it's very disorientated, but at some point you have to see what is the intention here. Why? Because it's easy to go one way or the other, but it's like boom, boom. It's about life. It's about what I said, what I cared about all my whole life. What is universal? What is true? What is good? It's about, and it's not taking side, because not taking side is taking a side. And it's the side of what is going to be healing to all of the community. What is going to move us forward? Right now, there's a real need to kind of find that centeredness, and it's very, very hard. And often what we grew up to, it's like children fighting on the playground, and we needed an adult to be the center figure to recreate justice. But in a world where, again, your institution we gave authority to make sense of the world, we have to find the center in ourselves. We have to develop that centeredness in ourselves of
Yeah.
what is going to be leadership and healing leadership for all, not just for one group of people. What is a world that works for everyone? Imagine a United States that worked both for the conservative and for the progressive. What does that look like? What does it require of us? Well, first, it probably requires us for having true heartfelt dialogue. And that's why I meant, in the first thing, it's like, oh, it's the debate tradition was supposed to make sense, but like people don't make sense when they feel attacked. If I'm in a conversation that is very triggering, very attacking, opposing, and etc., my nervous system is completely triggered and is ready to fight. That's not where I'm going to make sense of. You can make sense, compute information, like find a path forward when your nervous system is regulated, calm. And so that means the person you talk with in front of you, there needs to be a trust of like, okay, we want to figure that out. We want to figure out a world where we can both exist together.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a world where for me to exist, you need to not exist, which is because we're entering that field of like, for me to exist, you can't exist. And that's where you have death and war.
Yeah. It feels like the sacred anchor is really key in this, very much in the vein of what we talked about last time. Like, I mean, I was devastated during that week, and I consider myself to be a pretty well resourced person spiritually. So I wonder to myself, like, if I didn't have any spiritual resources, how would I stand a chance in hell of actually not being completely drawn into this? And I don't think it's possible. I agree. I think the memorial of Charlie Kirk really demonstrated both the shadow and the immense transformative seed that is held within the Christian side of this. And
Yes.
so Erika Kirk's speech is a demonstration of how going down like so many levels to the spiritual core can actually break you out of the cycle of retaliation and vengeance. And it's not entirely clear to me that more of it, like, it's not clear to me that a progressive worldview with its more secular intellectual lineage has the resource to make that move. Maybe it's
Yes.
the case, but I'm not sure that they do. And so there's some need to actually come together around like, what are those cycle breaking spiritual moves? And
Yes.
the Christ move is one of them. You've also presenced Thich Nhat Hanh, who it sounds like also is able to make that move in the context of a perennial cycle of violence. One thing I wanted to take you up on, I think there's a tension here about the debate and dialogue piece. I deeply resonate with the sense that words are like, our word has power. Our word is an expression of the coherence of our own reality, and it also can shape reality outside of us. One of the biggest points of contention around this in the weeks afterwards was this notion of words as violence. And I think there's a lot of trouble around this issue because there's like a strict, grounded kind of physical and legal sense of violence, of like actually enacting violence upon another. Like, you can very strictly define what that is. And then there's more of a expanding that into like moral violence or spiritual violence or emotional violence. And this happens in therapeutic world. It happens in progressive discourse, ideas about structural violence, etc. And the danger there, of course, is that if you say, well, speech is also violence, and your opponent gets to define which speech is violence, then it actually becomes symmetrical to use bombing and shooting and assassination against speech that you disagree with. So I 100% agree that debate
Yes.
is insufficient to the moment. It's not transformative enough. You can't transform people's perspectives deeply enough with debate. But I wonder if you could speak a little bit more to that distinction around violence and speech.
One should not put everything onto a horizontal piece and say that insulting someone verbally and bombing them is equal violence. That's, I just want to make that really clear. There's no two ways around it, you know. Uh, 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 yes, I don't want to create a sense of like, oh, it's a matter of perspective. Words are violent, and it's equally no, it's not equally violent. You know, physical violence but, and I was more speaking to the matter of words because I don't think people treat words as action. People treat words as something that is like floating
Mm-hmm.
on existence. But if breathing is an action that you're barely aware of, but it is an action, speaking is also an action. And so speaking has impact and consequences and karma. And so, and when you speak words, how say, when you don't give importance to your word, you don't give importance to yourself. When you think your words don't matter, it's because you don't believe who you are matter in the world. You don't realize how powerful you are. But you see, when you're a parent, you see how powerful your words are. You say to your child, Father Christmas exists. Father Christmas really exists for your child. If you say to your child, you see that your children bathed, they create the world, they construct the reality by the words they bathed in, and by therefore the belief system about themselves and the world they have. Words are extremely powerful. And and I just was talking about words and violence as like people need to understand that words are an action, because it's like is like there's physical
Mm-hmm.
action and words is a different category that don't belong in the category of action. No, they do. They do. They're in also in the category of action, and they have different level of impact. But the idea that your words don't have impact, that you're not in reality. You're not in reality of the power we are born with.
100%. Yeah. I mean, you
Just to
just bring it
express
down to,
very concretely,
yeah.
there's a moment you're not married, and the pastor or the mayor, depending on like secular or not, declares you married, husband and wife, or wife and wife, or whatever, but declares you married. It's a matter of a declaration. It's a word. There's a moment you're something, and there's a moment you're not something. Why there's this, war on words about pronouns? Because they matter. Because why is because words matter. They construct our sense of reality. If it didn't matter, there wouldn't be so much heat around these things. So there is a moment you speak something, and there's one is a state exists and a state doesn't exist. Like you're married, you're not married.
Mm. Yeah. I'm also, I resonate a lot with that. Obviously, I think like vows, declarations, and also in relationship, like you can do a lot of harm with words without, you can potentially, in some contexts, you could do more harm with words than with physical action in a relational context. wonder, I think the other nuance here that's really, really important is that has to be coupled with like intention and energy. And if we kind of, there's that one of the moves that's been made that has actually made the kind of the commons and the collective conversation space around these polarized issues so barren and so hostile is basically to say using the wrong words or using the wrong expression or using the wrong pronoun like is the crime itself
Mm.
devoid of a sense of, well, actually, where is the intention? What's the underlying energy? Because it's not just words as like solidified grammatical forms and signifiers. It's what's the vibration? And that's what's really like, that's where the distinction lies, I think. That's where we have our deepest effect. And that's what actually requires us to listen to one another, I think. And a lot of the kind of character assassination, Charlie Kirk is this, Charlie Kirk is that, the only way to really get the measure of a person is to listen to their beingness. Like, what is their beingness telling you? Rather than what is like, even if they're saying, well, I believe this is my assessment of what the situation in Israel and Palestine is. It's almost more important to me what is their being, what's the depth of their being telling me, because it's very clear there's a multiplicity of perspectives on a lot of these issues and a lack of resolution. So there has to be a deeper sense of how do we build coherence and trust.
Yes, yes. Um, that's been a muscle that I'm constantly trying to practice. Being someone who has a trying to find that centeredness, because it's very easy, at least for me, to get pulled in one direction or the other, and mostly pulled by my own inner insecurities. And it's my insecurity that rips me apart. And when that insecurity sense of worth can be reassured, then it becomes easier and easier to find the centeredness, the spiritual warrior blade that can cut through the pain and the fog. And it takes time to sharpen the blade,
Mm.
and to mostly unveil the fog that I swim in. Because it's one thing to talk about other people's fog, but it's mostly what is fogging my eyes. Yeah, and therefore it's about the transformation is about who we're being as human being, because the default of human being is like we're born with a pack of seeds. We have the seven sins, but we also have a pack of seeds of the seven virtues, or we have illusion, greed, but we also have rightful speech, compassion, understanding, wisdom. We have all. And so once you have this pack of seeds, it's like, which seeds are you going to water? Are we going to water the seeds of understanding, forgiveness, compassion, patience, or, rage, hatred, fear? And that's a daily practice. And so it's about transforming. And what you say is like, is maybe not so much what they say, but is how, in a way, almost who they're being when they say that, how we say that. I have heard of a person who said about Thich Nhat Hanh that they went to find out who Thich Nhat Hanh was just because they saw a picture of him smiling, not because of what he said. It's like is for his way of being. And that's sometimes why I try to practice with Rufus is like, okay, there are all the intellectual points we can make and we can be right or wrong about it. And maybe we feel we're right about these things, but it's not about if the intellectual point, because we can always write a book and people can read it, but it's about the way of being. It's about our way of being. And it's particularly about our way of being when conflict arises. And if people will start feeling that and noticing that and being attracted to that, because there's very little leadership in being in moments where things gets hard. And that's the also the thing I'm trying. It's the hardest practice because there's always a part of me that is a child that wants to be protected and seen and for things to be fair and but and what I'm discovering more and more, yeah, part of leadership is taking the heat, is taking the heat and showing up in your way of being that is bigger, not like as a way I want to dominate or say how superior I am, but bigger than this kind of hurt ego voice that can appear at time and wants to focus the attention back on us. But more like, okay, I am actually okay. I am safe. And what is the thing I'm committed to that is bigger than me? That it will allow me to rise above the pain and the hurt and suffering. And it's not about repressing the hurt and suffering that might arise at time, but it's like, okay, I'm doing that because I'm committed to something bigger than myself. I'm committed to that because we have to go beyond this conflict. We will not survive. Our children will not survive. Easy to say, hard to do. So
Find out
that's
how to do
why we
that
all
next
need to,
time.
that's why we have to like, practice. And
Yes. Yeah.
that's the joy of being alive. That's the life has been given, so we get to practice. So we get to practice to grow these different sides of ourselves, the Wilbur four quadrant of like waking up, growing up, showing up, cleaning up. It's like you're a flower. It's like the flowers, we all have been given a gift. Imagine you're this flower who's closed. Inside, you have this beautiful nectar and pollen. And your gift is this colors that you have to offer is to give away. And each time is like opening one dimension. But if you open only one dimension, the bees can't come in. And you open another unfold, and more bees can come in, and other unfold. And so your destiny is to die. A flower is meant to fall and to die, and to have been fully bloomed for all its petal to open up so the world can consume its pollen and take it away. And so that's the inner
Mm.
development. Each time you have to develop your compassion, you have to develop, clear-sightedness, you have to develop wisdom and this giving yourself away is the movement of life. It's like once the sunflower is dead and it has given all its seeds into the soil, then its body is then given to replenish the soil for the next generation of sunflower to grow.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sylvie. I really feel you expressing beautiful speech today. And I resonate so deeply with the call to extreme ownership and leadership that you voiced. And really, I also appreciate deeply the sense of patience that I received from you in this context of the gradual sharpening of the sword of wisdom, the gradual nurturing of the seeds, and really attending to like, what am I watering? What am I cultivating through this? Rather than simply like what's happening in this particular crisis. And I think that offers actually a promising way forward for us. So yeah. Thank you so much for today. Is there anything else that you wanted to include?
I just want to offer like a kind of a prayer or meditation for all the people in the world where their heart feel torn apart. They feel so much anger, sadness, fear, insecurities, uncertainty. May they find peace in their heart and find the seed of peace that can exist right there, right now for them. That they are safe. because we are not separate. That they can find the seeds of love and joy and hope in their heart, and hope for all of humanity, even the humans that seem so different and opposite to them. To see that that is also their brother. And I look in my life of who right now do I need to make peace with and offer love and compassion, and to not seen as a threat. And to look at these people and remind ourselves what they look like as a child, that all of us were children once. Even Xi Jinping, even Putin, even Donald Trump was a child. And really to cultivate the path of wisdom. That people do know in their heart what is wise. I think there's something universal about knowing in our heart what is true, not being able to recognize what is truly good, and to allow ourselves to be touched by the insight of what is truly good.
Mm.
So yes, you're right. In this kind of time where you talked
Amen.
about, amen, yeah. You know, you talked about how the conservative Christians had faith in, you know, the Christian tradition, and the progressive don't. That's the thing that, you know, I would like, I'm someone who likes to touches many traditions. But yes, there's something that we need to give ourselves to something bigger than ourselves to be able to transcend that level of pain, and that level, and to transcend it. Yes. And maybe that's where, for the secular realm, or the progressive secular realm, they have to retouch the importance of the religious realm. But maybe then there is like the birth of a new religion, a religion that can or reinvent or reinvigorate, but also see the limitation of certain religion. I don't know, but what I'm really clear is secularity is not enough to help us go beyond. And as we try to go beyond, we have to watch out for the shadow of religions too.
Plenty for us to explore in the next round, Sylvie. I really, really appreciated this dialogue. Thank you so much.
Welcome.